You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right, what's up, Coaches Nation? Great to see you again this week. This is Dr. Sheri Fluellen with our amazing co-host, Faisal and Ensaun. And we are here today for this episode to start a 3-part series of one of the most important aspects of being a coach. I'm going to leave you with that teaser here for a minute to let you think about, well, what is the most important, one of the most important parts about being a coach. So we're going to dive into that in a minute. But before we do that, we're going to talk about our wins for the week. And I want you guys to think about your wins for the week. Faisal, share a win with us, please.
I'd love to. The most recent win around my, for some reason, I've been saying D at the end of when. So my recent win in the wind that's going to blow me towards another direction is that I've been like many of the seeds that I've sown around collaboration, they're kind of like coming alive and in a very interesting way that this year I might end up with being at 3 or 4 live events, not just being a speaker, but actually designing and organizing these events too in different parts of the world. So I'm really excited about that because that's gonna, and I feel called to do something like that. So it's very exciting for me.
Yay, that's awesome. Congratulations. I know this is such a big part of your vision for your work and in the future, in the present, but also in the future. So that's so exciting that you're seeing stuff kind of materialize.
Yeah, so exciting. I want to know your win, Dr. Sheri.
Well, so my win, yesterday I had a conversation with a coach about our sponsor community, which we'll get to in a minute. And it was a really energizing conversation. And what I noticed about myself was that when I got done with that conversation with him, I was ready to have another one. And so it was kind of one of those self-recognition moments that, sometimes there's things that we do that we, for whatever reason, we kind of dread, or we have a little bit of, self-doubt around it. And so, but for me, it was a moment of like, oh, here's a window where I'm not experiencing that. So let me capitalize on that. And then I did some more reach outs right afterwards to just kind of ride that gravy train of, energy as long as I could. So for me, it was just a recognition of kind of how I was feeling and the state I was in, and then just shifting things around and capitalizing on that in the moment. So that was interesting to see.
I love that. And that goes very well into our conversation today.
It sure does. Because our conversation today and over the next 3 weeks is going to be around sales. And the reason that sales is one of the most important parts of coaching is because you may be the most amazing coach with the most amazing techniques. You can make the most and help facilitate the most amazing life changes. But if nobody knows about you, or you can't communicate your ability to help them with that change, then you're really not, you don't have a business. You're not able to actually do what it is that you're wanting to do and what you can do. So that's why sales is such a critical part of being a coach. But I would say, I don't know, what do you think, Faisal? It seems to be one of the parts of being a coach that people like to talk the least about.
Definitely. And I think this is a part that needs to get amplified more and more, because if we can't connect with people, if we can't reach out to people, if we can't connect with other human beings, it actually doesn't matter. And I have a visitor.
She's got Play-Doh.
And she's got Play-Doh for me to open. Sorry about that. I feel like if we don't have anybody to connect with, not only do we not develop as a coach, so you can have a basic foundation of skill sets as a coach, as based on your life experience, but if you're not consistently interacting with other human beings, you're not doing those sessions, then you're not growing as a coach. I don't care how many abstract and conceptual and certifications and skill sets you have in the background. If it's not being tested in the field, it doesn't work. And on top of that, you're not creating your impact. It's all in the background. Nothing's happening. Nobody knows that you can help.
Yeah, it's what we lovingly call, or maybe not so lovingly called it, the covert coach. We joke about that. It's like, are you a covert coach?
I was for a while.
Absolutely. And sometimes, I have to think about that for myself. I'm like, okay, how much am I really being intentional in putting myself out there? And that's extremely vulnerable. And there's a little ego involved, or can be involved, because if you reach out and maybe somebody doesn't respond in the way that you were hoping, sometimes there can be that little internal hiccup and challenge in that process. Before we continue this conversation though, Faisal, I think it's important to talk about our sponsor, which is very instrumental in the whole conversation of sales. So our sponsor for this podcast is the Coaching Mastery community, which, like its name implies, it's a community of like coaches who, while different, but also like coaches who really want to make a huge impact in the world. And the community helps build coaching mastery, which is, the delivering of the coaching and helping figure out how to have your biggest impact, but also the business mastery and the sales side. And we actually have a really cool ongoing challenge that we have in our community to help people really level up in their sales. Can you kind of touch base on that?
Yes, and the challenge is actually pretty simple. It's around how we can connect with other human beings. Not any complicated funnels, not any complicated systems that, you need to set all this stuff up before you can actually reach out to people, but a very direct, simple, intuitive, common sense way of reaching out to people, connecting with people, and serving them. And we do it within a community system around other coaches and human beings who are actually trying that, and they're going out there doing it and then coming back with the feedback that they got from that process, and then they're sharing it with the rest of the group consistently every week. And we're challenging each other to do things that we wouldn't normally do if we were sitting there alone and in our home and not be accountable to anybody.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool to see how much excitement and effort people are putting into really growing their business and doing it with other people that are excited too, and nervous, and all of that wrapped in one. Yeah. All right, so Faisal, I would love to hear, what did the shift for you? How did that happen in finding clients from the beginning stages of your coaching journey to kind of where you're at now? So today we're going to just focus on that first section of growing your business, is like, how do you find your people? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it actually takes me back to this episode in one of my favorite shows, Seinfeld. As soon as he said that, so there's this episode, and then if you know the characters, but the main character is Seinfeld, the comedian Jerry Seinfeld, and then there's his friend George. They're in a drugstore, and George comes in running towards Seinfeld. He's like, "Look at that girl! Look, there's a girl there." Something along those lines. Seinfeld looks at her and he's like, "No, actually, no, I got it wrong. I mixed the two episodes." So he comes and he's like, I just found out that I can go to this amazing party in this other town about 2 hours away or something like that. And Seinfeld looked at him like, why would I go that way, all the way there for a party? And George says, "There'll be girls there." Like, there are girls everywhere. Look, there's one right there. Look, someone just came in. They're everywhere. Why do I need to go 2 hours away to a party to get girls? It was like, he just gives them a bad look. So that's kind of my take on clients. They're literally everywhere. It is, I don't think there's a secret sauce around where you're going to find clients. They could be the person, that could be the person you run into in your lobby, in your building, or outside of your home, or your neighbor, or anywhere. And I mean, obviously you can strategize this better. You can find better communities, better environments, but it all starts with the clients are not the problem. The people that are going to work with you are not the problem. If nobody knows that you exist, then and nobody knows that you do what you do, then there is actually zero chance of you finding clients. But what we're talking about is how can you raise the chances of you getting connected with the right clients, and how can that get amplified over time? And for me, the biggest shift came in is, and this is actually the hardest part for coaches, and even the coaches I've worked with, myself included, is, so for example, in the beginning stages of my coaching, I tried different things, but here was the problem. So I would do like a webinar type of thing. A few people would show up. So it was actually successful, but I didn't look at it like that. I would do it. Few people show up. I'll go through a webinar, make my offer. One person might sign up, or nobody will sign up. And here's what's happening in the background. I ended up like, oh, that was a disaster.
Mm.
And then I sit on that. I run through that in my head consistently. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Why didn't I promote this thing? And then emotionally going through that for the next month.
Mm-hmm.
And not doing another one because I have so much pain associated with that process.
Mm. So sometimes when we are, so I'm just kind of extracting some stuff out of what you're saying. One of the challenges I think that you had, and I will raise my hand and say I absolutely have had, and probably still do have that, is at times is we put our stuff out there, whether like a big grand gesture or whether just a little bit, and we don't get the return on our time, energy, advertising, whatever that we think we should. And then we internalize that and, well, we're not good enough. I can't do this. Nobody wants it. I mean, there's all these different thought patterns that can get introduced. And then we have a decision on, do we wallow in those thought patterns, or do we change them in a way that serves us in our coaching practice better?
Yeah, and it's important in two ways, especially for coaches. I think it's deeply important because I realized in those moments when I would try different things. So I was actually trying. The problem was I wasn't sticking to anything. And in fact, I'll give you the contrast of that. So last year, I did the same exact thing. I would do a webinar style Zoom calls. A bunch of people will show up. I'll get 1 or 2 clients and I'll be like, success. Or I would do another one. Nobody showed up, but I realized, holy shit, I barely promoted this. Success. I'm going to do more. So it wasn't that I was doing something wrong. It was I was looking at it completely the wrong way, and I was processing it completely in a way that was not effective. And a big part of that was my own internal system, like how I was processing emotions, how I was dealing with my own thoughts. And we shouldn't be telling coaches that, but we do because we're human beings. Even though we're coaches, we shouldn't assume that we've gotten a handle of it. Our own environment tells us if we have a handle on it or not. I didn't as a coach. And so I've had to do a lot of deeper work around that. Part of it is that, but if you talk to some of the best salespeople, when let's say they get to the end of a conversation or multiple conversations or collaborations, whatever, it's a no. You will never hear that it's about them. They can say that, oh, I can improve this area. You'll be like, well, it didn't work out. Let's move on. They don't internalize it.
Right. So that is one significant area that all of us coaches can work on, is whatever your sales strategy is, however you're trying to find people, whatever you're saying or doing, how can you work on being more objective about how it ends up, objective, like, okay, well, maybe I could have done these couple things differently and maybe address things differently, but this isn't a rejection on me. This just wasn't a good fit, wasn't the right solution. Who knows? Like, so what I'm hearing you say is that is one of the most important mindset shifts that we can make as coaches around sales.
So it specifically, for me, it was more around money, and we actually had a really good conversation about that with Julie in the last episode. So yes. For those who are listening to that last part of that conversation, we actually went in depth around sales and our blocks around money, and they're both very interconnected. Because if I take the same person and get them to sell something that they're connected without the money piece, they will be amazing salespeople. And I think coaches are, because they're influential. But as soon as you bring in money into the picture, there are a lot of blocks. So there's not only internal work around your sense of feeling rejected or feeling like it's about you, but it's also the work around specifics, like big themes around, let's say, money. Let's say asking people for something. These are big things that most adults don't know how to do. Yeah. I didn't know how to do that. I still sometimes struggle with that. So I have to consciously say that, no, I'm going to do this because this is important. It's not just about me.
So quick story, as you're saying, a lot of us adults have blocks around asking for things. I am so amazed over my kids because they don't have any issues asking for stuff. And I'm not just saying to the parents, but let me share a story. I was away from home for about 9 days working on a project a couple weeks ago. Right. And so my husband, talking to my husband one night, and he proceeds to tell me the story of our kids. They went for a bike ride. They were about 1.5 miles away from our house. And my youngest daughter, her bike breaks or something doesn't work right. I don't know if the chain came off or what, but they were next to a pawn shop. And so they go into the pawn shop, cajole the people in the pawn shop to come out and help them try to fix the bike. And not only that, is they ended up successfully somehow navigating so that the owners of the pawn shop gave my kids money to go next door to buy snacks while they wait for the people to try to fix their bike. And I laugh because I'm like, I think kids are such natural salespeople. Like they're not willing, or they're not usually afraid. The younger they are, it seems like this more naturally is present. But there seems to be this lack of embarrassment or lack of, this perspective that they shouldn't just ask for what they want and see what happens. And so I laugh and am so proud of them every time I hear these stories, because I'm like, I need to take a page from their playbook. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Call it like you see it. If you want something, ask for it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody says no, and they do get a lot from people when they just simply, be who they are and ask. So I chuckle every time I hear one of those stories, and because I think it just shows how naturally we kind of, some of us have that, and maybe everybody has that, but we kind of, through society and all of the life circumstances, we kind of beat that out of ourselves.
Yeah. And what you shared was that if we assume, and it's not very hard to figure this out. Like you said, all you have to do is observe kids who are younger. You will find that they don't hesitate much. In fact, like we just saw this right now. Like my daughter came in, she opened the door a little. She's 2.5. She opened the door a little bit. She saw my face. She waited for about 10 seconds to see my reaction. And then she came in and she was crying at I don't even know what happened downstairs, but she came in with her Play-Doh and she just put it there, and I knew what she wanted. I opened it. She took that, went and closed the door. Like, sales can be as simple as that. But I'll give you another scenario. So we were in the kitchen downstairs a few days ago, my wife and I, and Aliyah, our 6-year-old, she just went on it was the dining table. She has certain times that she can go on the laptop for some of her educational stuff, or she can play one of her games. So she didn't even say anything. She went in there, opened the laptop, and as soon as she did, Sarah, my wife, she looked at her. She hasn't said anything. Like, Mama, I know you don't want me to be here too long on the laptop, and I know that you don't want me to go into those other that other site thingy. So I'm just gonna go on this for a little bit to do one game, and when I'm done, I'm gonna close it. And this is Sarah's face. Like, she had no objections. She dealt with most of her objections in that one statement, and I'm looking at her. I'm like, that is high level sales training right there. And we both looked at her like, we don't know what to say. I'm like, okay, continue on.
That is hilarious. That's hilarious. And in both of those examples you gave, you had a connection with your youngest daughter to that you knew what she wanted, you met her need, and she was happy. And I think, thinking about our potential clients, there's a lot of conversation around finding your niche clients. Who can you best serve? And part of that process is when you identify, what is it that you can do extremely well? How can you help them extremely well? You're able to get that across and meet that exact need that they're looking for. Just like her, you opening the little Play-Doh container for her, and she's like, "Yep, that's what I needed. I'm out." How can we get to the point where we know that specifically? Like, she didn't need a hug. She didn't need your soothing words. She didn't need you to say anything. She just needed that one thing, and she was good. And so how can we get so good with our clients at recognizing for our potential clients, what it is they need, rather than part of our, saying all the things that they don't really care about, or that's not really important to them, but honing in on, like, this is the way that I can help you, so that they are drawn into that.
Yeah, and then I actually realized this the hard way. It was actually Sarah's gonna love this because I'm mentioning her a lot here. So this actually, like, I've been on social media for a good 6 years now, and I've been doing consistently videos and posts of all kind. And I remember the first year and a half or so of when I used to do videos, like, my videos were always off, and I couldn't pin it. And one day, Sora said something which I didn't like that she said it, but it was very true. And it always seems to be that the other side knows what you're doing. She's like, in your videos, it seems like you're talking to your family. It seems like you're addressing your family.
Mm.
And I was like, I didn't like it because I didn't want to address that, because it was just this subconscious desire to connect with my family that I didn't know how to do at the time. And I was using kind of like their examples and things like that. But the problem is that my family is not very aligned with the things that I think about.
Oh.
So I was just trying to connect with people that I really wanted to connect with, but it wasn't the people I wanted to support.
Yeah.
It wasn't the people I wanted to help at the coaching level.
Yeah.
So when I realized that slowly, I realized, should I be talking to my family? Should I be talking to them? Or should I be, because I realized a few people that I had served, they were very different from the way my family was. By family, I mean my siblings, cousins, family, that side.
Yeah.
So that got me to do a little bit of work, internal work, is that who do I want to serve? And initially I had a lot of confusion around, well, who's my niche? Like, we think about it, and there are processes that you can go through where you can find your niche, but I think it boils down to what feels, who do you want to work with in your heart? And it's not one type of person, but it might be a type of psychology. It might be a type of thinking and feeling and vision and values. Yeah. Who do you align with? Who do you want to work with? And I realized more and more that the kind of people I want to work with are people who have bigger purposes, who tend to care about their purpose, who tend to care about their legacy, who tend to think about things far ahead. who either want to create bigger visions or are creating visions in their life, who are thinking about the bigger picture in the world. And as it turned out, I started getting more and more involved in different communities, and the community I fell in love with is, that multifamily real estate investors. And it's funny because I'm not even that kind of investor yet, but I fell in love with them because I realized that was the medium, but what they really care about is their legacy, their purpose, their identity, how they're showing up, their spiritual purpose, all that stuff, which was so deeply connected to me too. So I connect with them at a very deep level.
What I love about what you're saying, Faisal, is that I can tell there was a journey that you went on where you found a group of people that really embodied the kind of the kind of client you wanted to serve. But you sure as heck didn't know that at the beginning. You were super confused. You were targeting the wrong people without even realizing it. It got pointed out to you painfully. You accepted at some level. You're like, all right, fine, my wife is right.
That was very painful to recognize.
I believe it was. And then you're like, well, now what do I do? And so you're working and struggling at trying to figure this out, because I think it's easy for us to just go into this coaching journey feeling like everybody else has it figured out. Like I have been part of plenty of group coaching experiences that have been focused on how do you find your niche or your niche, depending on what part of the country or the world you're from. And it's almost, and I sometimes I will come away from that. I'm a little more clear, but maybe I wasn't 100% clear. And I kind of feel like, well, something's wrong because I don't really know. And so I just want to give permission to the coaches that are listening to this is it's okay if you're still a little confused. It's okay if it feels a little cloudy still, because I really think that's part of the journey as you struggle with identifying, who it is. And sometimes it's just who it's not. And that's been part of my journey is like, I will have coached somebody and I'm like, oh, like I don't look forward to coaching them. I'm doing it dutifully, but I don't look forward to it. And so I've had to think about why do I not look forward to this? And it's given me a little feedback on, oh, there's something about them that kind of sucks my energy. And if I can recognize that, then I can be more intentional about who I say no to in the future as my client. And of course, it could also mean there's more work I need to do on being a coach. I mean, there's lots of different things, but that could be an example of maybe who you don't want to be working with. And so it's just the more clients you accept and take and then you have that self-reflective period. I think that is part of the gold of what can help us really settle in on who and what values they hold. And I love, Faisal, that you kind of pointed out something that I think we easily get stuck in. And that's the idea of our niche. Like, what is their age range? What is their ethnicity? Or what is their, religious affiliation? Or what is their job or their career? And those are often the metrics we think about. But those may not actually matter at all. Maybe it's more about their emotional development. Maybe it's more about their world values or worldviews. Maybe it's more about their, as you said, their vision or something that's less tangible. Maybe that's really what is going to put boundaries around who your ideal client is.
Yeah, I love that. And there's one other thing that you're also highlighting in a subtle way is that, and for me, that was important because when I came into the coaching world, one of the most primary things, aside from this being a business, was for me to grow as a human being. And then as I slowly went towards it, well, what I learned a lot from my clients. So who's going to actually challenge me to grow, not just in terms of my coaching skill sets, but as a human being? And a lot of times when I'm with my clients that I work with now, they are challenging me to grow in so many ways because I have to challenge them. And if I'm going to challenge them, I better be ready to challenge myself in those areas.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the coaching doesn't even work. So a lot of my growth has been growing with my clients. It's not like, oh, I'm sitting here and I'm going to help you with this process. No, let's go on this journey together. And I think that's a kind of missed part of coaching that the coaches might miss. We're like, well, we're the coach. No, you're in this relationship that you're going to grow with your clients. It's a very intimate relationship, actually. Whatever you're going to challenge this client with, you need to be just as vulnerable that this is an area I struggle with too. But what would it take for you to grow? And the ideas that they share, the things that they try inspires you. And it's incredible how that happens. Like, and that's why I'm so like addicted to this whole process in a good sense. That what will happen if I go on stage and I'm in front of these people? That's a whole different level, right? Yeah. Or what would happen if I do that more consistently? What would happen that if I'm consistently involved with these kind of people? I can't even imagine how I will grow, to be honest. Can't even imagine what side of me comes out.
Right. I love that. And so I had said a few minutes ago that, having that self-awareness about how you're feeling about a client could mean that maybe that's just not your ideal client. And it could also mean that it's just highlighting your own discomfort in an area that you need to grow. And maybe it's doing more of it. Maybe it's, maybe that discomfort is about your own insecurities. And maybe it's a recognition that you need to grow in some skill set or something like that. And by jumping in and doing that, that might be a pivotal point for you. I think I want to say, so we're both certified under, one of our certifications is under Brendan Burchard and the Certified High Performance Coaching. And I want to say he shared a story one time about like the first time that he coached a billionaire. And I remember him saying, kind of part of his story was like, oh, I'm not a billionaire. Like, how can I coach a billionaire? And so there was kind of that fear, that concern. But he was confident enough in his ability to be able to take this guy beyond where he was already. And so I think about that example because money is so tangible, and we easily classify each other, and cultures based on finances or based on money. And so just because somebody has a different status in some way, or has some differences than you, or maybe you even aspire to be that way, doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to help them. So maybe that discomfort is really your internal prompting to grow and to try something and to really try to level up in that way.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I think it's actually pretty irrelevant what somebody's status is and what external success level they are, because I mean, and then this is a part that was very confusing for me early on, because even in our community, there were conversations around this, and there were some people that there were completely different views on this. Like, well, I want to see my coach to be very successful, but how do you define success there, and what part of their success do you want to see? If your success term is very cookie cutter, they need to show that they have achieved this level of external success, then obviously you can't work with most coaches. But when you look at it from a different point of view, coaches have a very unique take on this stuff, is that they're not just, they might be at different levels of skill set, external success for all sorts of different reasons, but what they have worked on the most is their internal processes. And this is why it's so important for coaches to have done their internal work, because that's where your actual skill sets are. How have you learned to process your emotions? How have you learned to work with other people, whether it's your team or family or customers? How have you been a leader in your community? Those are skill sets that they need. How do you think about your deeper internal parts of yourself, your core, your spiritual life, all that stuff? How do you grow consistently? How do you see your world? How do you see progress in your world? And if we haven't done those work at wherever we are, based on the context of our life, if we haven't done deeper work in that area, then when you come across a billionaire, the only thing you will notice is the $1 billion. not the human being who will have the same exact challenges as you, just as in a different context.
Yeah. Yeah. So our internal work as a coach is a critical component to us being able to then connect with clients and being able to speak in a way that helps give them hope, helps them see another way, another perspective. But part of our job as a coach is to uncover what, as we're on the journey of figuring out who do we really want to work with, what does that look like? It allows us to really be able to understand how our growth and our capacity can connect with our potential client to meet their need for their own growth and what they're wanting to do. One of the challenges, though, and sometimes we talk in this language, is what a client wants versus what they need. And so in the sales process, it's like, this is what they say they want, but it may not be the ultimate of what they really need. And they're not able to kind of label it in the most obvious or in the most clear way. And going back to just the idea of money, somebody says like, I want to make $100,000 this year. Okay, that's what you want. What do you really need? Like, what is underneath that? And peeling back the layers. Maybe it's ultimately, providing security for my family or something like that, that there's like this, internal sense of responsibility to provide for one's family, So if as you're thinking about your ideal client, see if you can identify what those core wants are. Because I think that is also kind of where that power of connection will come. What are your thoughts around that? Need versus want?
I love that. And part of it is what we described as that part of that data will come from like, who do you want to work with and what do they think? A lot of the times the people that we want to work with is a lot like us, or a lot like how we want to grow, at least. And so we know what their thought process and challenges are. So at least as a starting point, we can think through, well, what are the things that I want? What are the things that I need? What are the things that the people and then this is where experience and experimentation comes in. As you start to work with those kind of people with that baseline, you start to gather data. What is the language that they're using? For example, the clients I work with, they talk a lot about, let's say in the multi-family world, freedom is a huge thing for them, but they talk a lot about, well, I need $10,000 to be able to do that. I need to be able to make this much cash flow to be able to do it. These are things that they want, but they're not necessarily the things that they need. So I have to be able to use that language to help them kind of get interested, but then go deeper and towards the things that they know that they need, but they're not acknowledging it. Such as them taking care of the balance that they need in their life, taking care of their relationships, taking care of like what are the values they're bearing and bringing, how are they leading their families, their communities, their team, all that stuff. So that a lot of this comes as you start to work with people more and more too. It's very hard to gather data if you haven't actually been in the trenches with this stuff. At least in my experience, that's been the case. And it also connects with something I know I love that you're really good at this part, Dr. Sheri, is, and this is also, and I recommended a book, The Business Book of Coaching, or the Book of Coaching by Ajit Nawalka. He talks about that as, and there are a couple of challenges around that, but we'll talk about that. But the main thing is that coaches generally hesitate to talk about their values, and especially out there in social media. And out there when they're talking to people, they hesitate to share because they might come from an industry is like, well, I don't want to talk about the things that are important to me, the things that I believe, because what if this person doesn't like it and then I can't connect. The problem with that is that there's one important thing in marketing and sales that you can't do with that when you're hiding aspects of yourself, is that if your potential clients don't know who you are and your values and what you do, what you stand for, then what you're going to do is you're going to attract a mixed bag of people.
Yeah.
You're not going to repel the people that are not aligned with you, and you're not going to attract the people that are really aligned with you. So you're already setting yourself up for kind of a failure, in the sense that it'll be hard for you to start to go through a whole sales process and work extra hard to connect with.
Yeah, I think that was one of those big aha moments I had. I don't know how long, a couple of years ago maybe, and that was the idea that if I get too specific on who I am and what I believe, and I'm not saying everybody has to believe what I believe. I'm not trying to push myself on anybody, but just be open about it. That will actually repel the people that don't want to be around people like me, or that have my beliefs or values, or that are so opposed that they just can't tolerate whatever. That might actually repel them. And when I had that realization, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's actually a good thing. Like that was amazing to think
It's
about
so
that.
freeing, right?
It
Now
was.
I don't
I was
have
like,
to kind of be so careful.
right? And in the world of like Grant Cardone and Gary Vee, they call them haters. I'm like, I could actually repel my haters. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a reason people like Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, all these guys, but it doesn't have to be like them. People do it in different ways. Like I will say things like bullshit or something like that in my language. I won't be as direct, but I will say it in terms of what I value. If I'm in a seminar, and that's why I'm so open to sharing, because I want them to know me. And it's actually, I learned this in one of the sessions, the webinar, but it was a live coaching session that I was doing multiple times a year. And when people would show up, let's say there are 7 or 8 people, by the end of it's a 2-hour exercise, I walk them through a coaching/training session. And at the end, it was interesting. I would spend about another half an hour, maybe an hour sometimes with them, just to find out more data around like what worked for them, what didn't. And then I would just make the offer and just wait there. I learned that from Frank Kern, but he's a master at that. He just waits there until you sign up. And they're like, you're still here. And this is how he says it. Like, it was this one thing to this day. I remember I signed up for his course. I never opened it. To this day, I don't know where that course is. I paid $300 or something like that. But he's like, well, you're still here. You're still listening to me. So that tells me that you're interested in it. So what can I answer? What can I help you with? And then you would go on to deal with objections. Like, you're a magician at that point. So I would just stay there. For me, it was just answering their questions and joking around with them. Just that after the training is done, I'm like, you can tell me I sucked. This was a complete waste of my time. And I was just joking around. But the interesting thing was the questions they would ask me was very interesting. They didn't care about the program as much as they wanted to know me. They'd be like, so tell me, what do you believe? Like, where did you come from? What did you like? They were so interested, and I didn't want to talk about myself that much, but then they kept asking me more and more questions. I'm like, why are they so interested in me than the program? But then what they were doing was that at some level, they were trying to assess, do I feel aligned with this person?
Yeah, they're trying to vet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think being open as a coach is a huge advantage. And it does take courage. It is uncomfortable to talk about certain things that you might believe, especially if it might be different. And this is the big challenge right now. So especially if you're in States, but most of the world right now, the big challenge is that anything you believe that goes against the collective norms, that goes, and generally humans are like that, but it's become amplified, then you can be canceled, you can be told off, you can be blocked, so it is an actual threat to your future. But it's also a huge leverage point. How you use it will be very, like, obviously you need to be a little bit strategic around that, but for the most part, people want to hear what you really believe. And because there's not a lot of realness and authenticity, and everybody's going towards, well, whatever other people want to hear, people are attracted to that, especially people who want to go towards coaching, because they're dying to seek something real in life versus whatever they're told in the world.
Yeah. Well, Faisal, we are coming to the end of our hour. So this session was this podcast is about, as coaches that are maybe newly certified or really wanting to just get some momentum in their business. How do they get started initially? Where do they find people? How do they, we're not even so much on where do they find people, but what kind of people are they looking for? Like, how do they identify those people? And so I'll make one suggestion of something very tangible people can do to kind of help them with that. And I would love for you to be able to give one tangible strategy or activity or whatever that people can use. So for me, one of the most actionable and powerful things that I was instructed to do, and it was through an internet marketing coaching program, and it was about how to better understand my potential ideal client, and that was to find people that are in my sphere of influence who might be my ideal client, and just let them know, hey, I'm really working on creating a program or a coaching program or whatever that's going to serve XYZ. And so for me, it was newer real estate investors. And, I would say, and I know that that you are interested in real estate. I would just love to pick your brain on, whatever. And would you be willing to do that for me? So I'm not asking them to be my client. I'm not pitching them. In fact, you don't pitch them. You very intentionally don't pitch them. But you have a half hour, however much they're willing to give you, and you ask them all the questions. Ask them every question you can possibly think of that will help you better understand them. What are their fears? What's holding them back? What's keeping them from doing what it is that they really want? What are some of the things that they love to do? What are their hobbies? Like, this is an opportunity for you to really better understand them. And if by the end they're like, oh my gosh, you understand me, I think I might like to sign up for your program. Be like, okay, you know what? This whole thing wasn't about that. Let's schedule a different time, a different time to deal with that, just to make it separate, to make it look like. The last thing you want to do is to say that you have an intention, and then for them to maybe feel like that wasn't the intention. But that interview was so incredibly valuable for me in better understanding my potential client. So that's my suggestion. Go do it. Find people, schedule a time, and just interview them. Make them the expert in the conversation.
I love that. I think that could be a very powerful process to understand more. I want to give a very simple suggestion, and I've seen this over and over in myself and my clients that I work with and other coaches that are part of our mastermind, is that it's very easy for people who live in the world of intellect, in the world of thought, in the world of academics, in the world of all that, to keep gathering information. So we get stuck in the process of just gathering info. And we're very good at accumulating information, but we don't know what to do with the information. So while you're doing this, it doesn't need to stop you from actually reaching out to people and having those coaching conversations. Yeah. Regardless of who, if you feel aligned with somebody, reach out to them, have a quick conversation. Hey, I'd love to chat with you about this thing, be upfront, direct, and then invite them to a coaching conversation. Many of them might not go right. You might stumble. There will be a lot of no, not yet. But they might refer you to somebody else who might be in it. But while you're analyzing all this niche and everything else, you can still do the work, and they can work concurrently. One doesn't have to say, because I've seen coaches for years, they're just waiting. I'm still gathering data, still trying to figure out who my niche is. So why can't you still reach out to people that you can serve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's a both and, not as you don't have to just do the research before you take action on getting clients. Absolutely. Great point, Faisal. All right, so those are your two pieces of wisdom we are leaving you with. But of course, this whole hour has been full of things about our mindset as coaches and how we talk to people and how we think about potential clients. So we trust that there was some valuable nuggets that you were able to extract out of this and be able to apply it to your life to reduce the drag or the internal conflict that you have that's keeping you stuck from really taking off as a coach that can serve and have impact.
Yes, and we'd love for you to go to our community page to see if it feels aligned with you. And if it does, we'd love to hear from you. You'll have an opportunity to submit an application. We'd love to support you on your coaching journey as somebody who wants to master their skill sets as a coach, but also somebody who wants to master the skill sets within the business. Because if you don't have the business, you won't be using the coaching skills anyway. And if you don't have the coaching skills, your business is not picking up. So they work with each other. And also make sure you like and share this video. And if you had any comments, thoughts, or questions, or anything you want to share, please do. We don't pretend to know everything. We just love sharing our perspective and our experience, and we'd love to hear from you. And also, if you want to be a guest on our podcast, I'm going to put a link for that one too. We have the coachesjourney.com pages up and running, and you can actually submit for that too.
Awesome. And so the Coaching Mastery community, we are launching our next challenge here shortly. And so we're going to be continually kind of launching a new challenge, within a short period of time, so that we've always got one running. And so go to our website, coachingmasterycommunity.com, so you can hear all about it. It will be an opportunity to give you in-depth, kind of get you going, no excuses, just get you moving and doing the actions that are actually going to lead to the results that you're wanting in your business. So we would love to have you as part of our challenge.
Awesome. And see you next week, same time.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.